Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me? Okay, I can't even see myself over here. So
Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi.
Aleichem Shalom. Give me a second. Computer every day is something else. Let's see this. Guys, I cannot see myself. Can you see me over here?
No.
No.
No. Quality.
Now we see you. We see you. I see you.
Yeah, Yaakov, you're here. Okay. All right. Every day something else over here. Mama, Daf Tzadik. Okay. With the help of Hashem, we are learning ERUVIN Daf Tzadik. Let us quickly review some of the Mishnah that we had on Pei Tes. The Mishnah began with Kol Gagoy So'ir, according to Rabbi Meir, Arashus Achas, allowing someone to carry from their Gag to their neighbor's Gag, even though they made no Eruv. The Chachamim disagree and they hold that Kol Echad V'Yechad, each Gag is Reshus B'fnei Atzma. So let's remember that's step number one. Step number two is we had yesterday a Machloikis Rav and Shmuel. Lishitas Chachamim. If I am not allowed to carry from my Gag to your Gag, so Rav brings up the challenge. We learn to rule that whenever you have a domain that's parutz b'meloyoi l'mekayim ha'asar loy, not only am I not allowed to carry into that other domain, but the rule normally is that does not even allow you to carry in your domain itself. And indeed, so is Shitas Rav. Rav l'chachamim holds that you may not even carry on your own Gag more than 4 amas, because it's nifritz of b'meloyoi l'mekayim ha'asar loy. And therefore, you can only carry within 4 amas. Shmuel disagrees with Rav. Shmuel holds that we use the halacha l'Moshe Messinai of good asik, and since there is in between these two houses, there are walls downstairs where people are living that separates one house from the other. So halachically, we extend those walls upwards. So it's not nifritz of the meloyei l'mekayim ha'asaloi, and Shmuel therefore was lenient, and he held that on your Gag l'chachamim you are allowed to carry in its entirety. So we're going to start on Daf Tzadik learning a boya, an inquiry asked by Rami Bar Chama, plus that is going to be based on Shitas Rav L'Chachamim. That will be the first step today. And then we're going to learn today 3 other arguments between Rav and Shmuel. Interestingly, the first one that we're going to learn new today is going to be Mamish, where Rav and Shmuel will take opposite positions. And the Gemara is going to bring that contrast. We will also learn a third machlokes. So yesterday was the first, the one that we just spoke about. We're going to learn number 2 today. Number 3 is going to be a ship that's turned upside down. A ship that's turned upside down. Guys, let's also remember the rule that whenever you have an enclosed area, right? But if the walls were not built for residential purposes, this is normally said by an orchard, by a garden, a karpav, that is more than the 2 beisa, shalehu kafladira midrabanan, you may not carry in there more than 4 amas, like a carmelist. I'm not calling it a real carmelist because we just learned a few daf ago. Any area that's enclosed, midoiraisa is reshus hayachid. If someone were to transfer something from outside of it, from a reshus harabim, inside of it, they're going to be chayiv chatos because it's really a reshus hayachid. Narvas then, it's a reshus hayachid plus. Be'emes, a reshus hayachid, inside of it, you can carry as much as you want. Chazal said, a karpav shaluk avadira, it looks like a reshus harabim. You're not allowed to carry within it. So a boat, interesting. How do we view the walls around the boat? Is it for residential purposes? Or maybe the walls of the boat are primarily built to keep the waters out? Even though you live in the ship, talking about a big ship, that's more than Beisa. It's not really that big, but a large ship today, whether you are allowed to carry inside of it, if you flip it upside down, can you carry on top of it? Do we say again, good asik? Another nukuda that we learned yesterday, that even Rav, who holds that you don't stam say good asik when using the walls in between both houses, that's because loy minkara mechitzta, because you can't see it. But the walls at the ends of the house, since even when you are on the roof, if you look down, you can see the outer wall. That wall is allowed to go up using good asik mechitzta. Same thing with the ship that's turned upside down using the top. Do we say good asik? Do we not say good asik? Do we say good asik to affect hukaf ladira? We can say good asik, but that's not called hukaf ladira. And the fourth machlekes will be about an achsadra. An achsadra means a pavilion. An achsadra means you have out there in the field, you have a couple of pillars that allow for a roof to sit on top of it. There is a klal called pi tikra yored d'soisen, another halacha l'moshe misinai. And by the way, we'll see in the beginning of today's daf that pi tikra yored d'soisen is only said when the roof is perfectly flat. So when you have, let me just use this, if you have a flat roof, that means that everything is a right angle, that the side of the roof is actually facing down vertically. If it's laying horizontally, so then the thickness of the roof is facing down. If you have a slanted roof, no one subscribes. Gabriel, if you want, you can sit on the other side, I'll see you better. No one subscribes to Pi Tikra Yored D'Soisem. So now, do we say Pi Tikra Yored D'Soisem even if you don't have a single wall? That means you can use it by an achsadra, which will allow you to carry inside the achsadra. Or we will see if you have at least one wall, Elamai, you need another 3 walls. Oh, then we can use Pi Tikra Yored D'Soisem. But to use that, even if you don't have a single wall, that's something that we cannot apply. That will be the 4th machlokes we'll learn today. And if we'll have time, God willing, we'll have time, we will begin to really go back to the Mishnah and Daf Peites, and we're going to analyze Be'ikir, Shitas Rav Meir, Shitas Chachamim. I'm certain that when I learned the Mishnah yesterday, I oversimplified and I have said things that are not correct. We learned the Mishnah correctly. The Mishnah only spoke about gagois, but we're going to see that once you start asking Rav Meir, can you carry from a gag to a chatzir? Can you carry from a karpav? We're going to see there are many pratim that were not spoken out in the Mishnah. And the Gemara is going to make a real analysis of the Mishnah, and we're going to see, wow, mamash tilem of details that we're going to understand from the mashma'os of the Mishnah, which will further clarify the 3 shittas of Rav Meir, Chachamim, and Abshin. Okay, so Chevra, we are on Daf Tzadik, Amid Aleph, all the way on top of the Amid. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Malachenu Shachal Yimdori. Being that today, like yesterday, like tomorrow, the dafim are relatively small, it's kedai, especially today, to learn a lot of Rashi. There are many pratim today. The concepts are easy, but there are many details, and we'll read it inside Rashi. So let's just remember, Nachamol. We have Shitas Chachamim in the Mishnah. The Chachamim hold that every gag is a reshus b'fnei atzmai. So if I'm neighboring you and our houses are touching each other and I was not ma'arav with you, I'm not allowed to carry from my gag to your gag. That's chachamim. On that says Rav, oy bazoi, I can't even carry in my gag more than 4 amas because now my gag is nifritza b'meloyoi l'mekayim ha'asr loy. Shmuel holds that we say good asik even though you can't see the mechitzas. Based on that, based on Shitas Rav, that you can't even carry on top of your own gag more than 4 amas, boy Rami bar Chama, the following question. Shtei amos b'gag. You are on your roof that has a neighbor, you can't carry more than 4. And now you have adjacent to your roof, you have an amud. We keep on learning about the amud. The amud means you have a pillar, you have a platform that's 4 by 4, that is 10 tfachim tall. What status does this have? A bona fide Reshus HaYachid. So near your gag, you have another Reshus HaYachid. So the question is, Mahu, could you carry from your gag onto the amud, not by carrying more than 4 amas, but within the 4 amas, is it considered a problem or not? Says Rashi. Guys, let's keep your finger in Rashi today. The top line, the end of the top line. Beis amas begag zeh. Since the question is based on Rav, that holds that gag shebein hagagin ein metaltel boy el bid dalad amas the asri ahadadi. So what's the mahu? What's the boy? Says Rashi, mahu letaltel meachas mehem lo amoy to amar bereshus harabim samach loy gevoya yud v'rachav dalid. Now, according to Rav, if I were to ask you, what status does your gag have? Now, I know that biblically it's a Reshus HaYachid. But now that you can't carry in it more than 4 amas, it's like a karmelis. According to Shmuel, your gag remains a Reshus HaYachid. According to Shmuel, if you have your gag, which is Reshus HaYachid, and then you have an amud next to it, what are you doing? You're carrying from Reshus HaYachid to Reshus HaYachid, which is a lot less problematic. I know that sometimes we have to have an eruv, but at least you're beginning, the bones are good. According to Rav, that holds that you can't even carry on your gag more than 4 amas, which means your gag has a din like a karmelis. So l'chayra b'chlal there's no bayim. Why would you even think that you can carry from a karmelis to a Reshus HaYachid? So says the Gemara, Amar Rabba to Rami bar Chama, I don't understand. And as Rashi pointed out, his question was lishitas Rav, lishitas chachamim. And as we just explained, your gag is like a karmelis, even though it says a karmelis. So karmelis for the Reshus HaYachid can be boilei. That's for sure. Rav will say you may not carry, even though you're not going beyond 4 amas, but you're making a transference from one domain to another domain. So the Gemara says no. That Rami bar Chama agav churfei loy ayin bo. I know that the literal taich is that because of his sharpness or because of his quickness, he did not look into it deeply. That's not what it means over here. It means that sometimes when the mind is working so quick, you don't spend enough time articulating, expressing what you mean to say in words properly. That's the loy. He was not ma'ayin how to word it. When you heard the question, that's not what he was asking. Of course, if there is an amud, l'rav, l'chachamim, you cannot carry from a area that's kikharmalis to a Reshus HaYachid. Elo, what was his boya? And we'll see this is taka only l'shitas Rav. If you have beis amas begag, same scenario. My gag and your gag, they're adjacent. But Meilan, my gag, I cannot carry more than 4 amas. So my gag has a din of a karmelis. And right next to it, aside of me being neighboring your gag, there was a beis amas ba'achsadra. Now, what type of achsadra are we referring to? This is very important. So a couple of details. Guys, Rashi around the 12 lines from the top of the Amid. Says Rashi, keep your finger in the mouth, your finger in Rashi. Beis amas ba'achsadra shel ba'olam achedim. Kodim kol achsadra belongs to someone else. And al gaba, the question is whether you can carry from your gag to where, not to in the achsadra. It's not practical. To the roof over the achsadra. Al gabe tikra shel achsadra. Now hold on. Again, if the achsadra has a din of a Reshus HaYachid, so again the gag will be a dinoi Reshus HaYachid. That's not the case. The achsadra is more than 2 sosayim, And furthermore, ve'ein lo mechitza, that's the definition of an achsadra. It's an open area. I will learn noch today. So what? Any area that has a roof, do we not say pi tikra yored v'soisim, which will render the achsadra reshus hayachid, which will render the roof on top also the gag of a reshus hayachid? No. So here it must be ve'ein pi tikra, the name of yored v'soisim. The reason why we don't say that, look at Rashi, guys. The avida ki urzila. What does that mean? Bishipua, Tigag and Shalono, the Frenchies. In other words, we only say Pitikriyoda de Soisam if the roof, guys, if the ceiling is put perfectly horizontally. So if you'll see, if there's a thickness to it, the thickness is facing down. So we extend it. The moment it's slanted, if you halachically extend it down, you're extending it on a slant. That is mavatal, the Torah, Pitikra, Yored V'Soisim. Let's go weiter to Rashi. And all of that means, Rashi is just explaining why we're speaking about an achsadra that has a din of a karmelis. Now you get the question. So the roof of the achsadra has a din of a karmelis. Now, according to Shmuel, my friends, that you are allowed to carry from your gag is a reshus hayachid. From a reshus hayachid to a karmelis, of course, you may not carry. But since Rav L'Chachamim considers the gag like a karmelis, gewaldig. So now let's go back in the Gemara. Mahu. In other words, it's agaf churfei. He said an amud, but he meant to say the roof of an achsadra that's built in a way that the roof has a din of a karmelis. In the Gemara. That kivim deloy hai chazi ladira. A roof area is not meant for residential purposes, whether it's the roof of a house. V'loy hai, this is the roof of the achsadra, is chazi ladira. And therefore we should consider it like it is one reshus. Weiter, I'm keeping in Rashi. Why would we say, and what will that help you? Zok Rashi, chad reshusahu, v'afal pi she'einon shel ish echad. Since ein bahem chilik reshusa, it's not considered a separate domain. But guys, don't we know that if I have my reshus hayachid and you have your reshus hayachid, without an eruv you can't carry? No, that is the topic of this whole Perek. And that's already diving into the Mishnah. Va'afilu l'Rabbanon, Chevra. What did the Rabbanon say? That I cannot carry from my gag to your gag. The Rabbanon said that. Here, it's not like two gagin. Why? Because the Hassan over there, which is the case of the Mishnah, since, listen, the Ika di Yoirin Lamata Bishnehem, people are living under each one of the Gagin, and therefore V'yesh Laimar, Kishem Sheyesh Chiluk Rishus Lamata Babatim. Two homes are, that's the bona fide, even though it's a bias and a bias, it has the same name, my house and your house, you need a native Chatzeres. So that's why roofs are worse. Kach Yesh Chiluk Lamayla, because the Chiluk of the Lamata goes up. Solik v'azeliel, moedidika words. But by an achsadra, people don't even live in the achsadra. So maybe it's not considered a chilik in the yoyrin. And since both have a din of a karmelis, maybe you will be allowed to carry. Now, in a karmelis, you can never carry more than 4 amas. Ein achanami. Rami Bar Chama is not asking for you to be allowed to carry more than 4 amas. He simply wants to know that if you're going to be carrying within 4 amas, but you're going to be going from your roof to the roof of the achsadra, maybe you will be allowed. Back in the Gemara, guys, keep your finger in Ashi, but go back in the Gemara. Oidilma, kivin the migagla gagoser. So migagla achsadra nami yoser. Oh, in other words, says Rashi, guys, keep your finger in Ashi. Dilma, kivin the migagla gagoser. Tamayu derabbanon. It's not because people live downstairs. Mishum, the kopti ashinui ba'olimhu. All we care about is if you have 2 areas that belong to different Ba'alim, if they were not Ma'ariv, you cannot carry from one Rishus to the other. If that's the case, the boya of Rami was when the Achsadra belonged to another Ba'alim, and maybe even according to Rav, who holds that the top of the Gag of your house is like a Karmelis, still you should not be allowed to carry, even within 4 amas, from your Gag to that Gag. That was Rami Bar Chama's boya. Now, says the Gemara, similar, it almost sounds it's the same, but it's not the same. It's one built on the other. Boy, Rav Bibi Barabaya. If you have Beis Amas Bigag, again, this is L'Shitas Rav, that holds that your Gag is like a Karmelis. And now you have Beis Amas Bechurba. You have a Churba, guys, this detail is important. A Churba whose walls are completely breached into the Reshus HaRabim. into the Reshus HaRabim loses its status of a Reshus HaYachid, but it's not Reshus HaRabim. Again, it has a din of a Karmelis. So here again, can you carry from your roof to the roof of the Churva? Now, we clarified that Rami's kasha was to the roof of an Achsadra, the Dinoi Kekarmelis. Rav Bibi Barabai is asking, can you carry from your roof to the roof of a churva, when it has a din of a karmelis? So it sounded like he was asking the same question, just giving a different name. Instead of calling an achsadra, he spoke about a churva. So right away he was attacked. Amar Rav Kahana, Lav Hainu D'Rami Bar Chama. You're asking the same question? And Rav Bibi got offended. Amar Rav Bibi Barabai, what you think? Do you think that I'm challenging you with someone else's question? You're thinking I'm doing plagiarism? And I try to cover my tracks instead of saying the achsadra I spoke about a churva. No, says Rav Bibi. Im tim soloimer ka'amar. My question was based on one side of the Rami Bar Chama's Baya, which is, let's read in the Gemara, then we'll read it in Rashi. Im tim soloimer that an achsadra let's read inside the Rashi 6 lines before the end of the narrow lines. You see the difference between a churva and an achsadra is because an achsadra is completely open. A churva is more chazi ladira, so to say, versus an achsadra. And how will that change? So he says, the last narrow line in Rashi, on one side, that you are allowed to carry from your gag to the gag of the achsadra. Why is that? Because what did we explain in Rashi when we learned the Boya? Since people don't live downstairs, see, when people live downstairs, it makes it more problematic. That's why from my house to your house, even though it's called a bias and a bias, can't carry if it belongs to 2 different owners. The reason why here it would have been better because no one lives there. So im tim solemet, indeed, which is why you were allowed the first line under the Gemara and Rashi, hachimai hasam hu dachsadra lichazim midi ladira. Avol churva, since chazia ladira betikun muat, it's called, a churva is what you call you buy a house and you fix it over and you flip it over here. No, there was no house there. The walls broke down. Now it became a ruin. Let's read it inside the Gemara. So do we say churva yes chazia ladira, which makes it problematic? Because the moment it's chazia ladira, it's like from my gag to your gag, like we learned in the Rashi. My gag is on top of a house that's roy ladira. The yoyrin chulakin. You have to make an eruv. Oidilma, since hashta mio leisle the yoyrin, so it will not be like migag lagag. It will not be migag lagag, and yes, you will be allowed. And on these bayas, or at least on the latter one, we say teku. I say the latter one. There's a klal that whenever the Gemara has an intim salaimer, the halacha is like the intim salaimer, even though the Gemara at the end says teku. The fact that we spend time asking a boya based on one side, that's the klal. There are exceptions. So Rav Bibi's kasha was on the intim salaimer, that Rami Bar Chama scenario is takelakula, that you are allowed to carry. Okay.
Rabbi, the only way you're able to carry in the ruin is if you're also able to carry on the roof of the portico, right? That's the
only way you would be allowed to carry, not in the ruin. From your roof to the roof of the ruin is based on the fact that you can for sure carry to the roof of the portico, of the achsadra.
Right. Okay, got it.
Okay.
Rabbi, could you just explain quickly, according to Rav, who does not allow you to carry on the gag, how would there even be a possibility to carry to something else?
I guess I have, before Shabbos came in, I already have an article on my gag. It was mamish near the edge of my gag. Even though Rav says you can't carry, you cannot carry daladamas, but less than daladamas you could carry. If me walking to the edge of my gag is 1 amma, and me walking on top of your gag, of your achsadra, of your churva is another amma, so I'm not violating the carrying 4 ammas. If we can consider these 2 domains close enough It's called Gagag, has the same name. People don't live downstairs. It's not Duyoid and Chulakim. Then you can carry without an Eruv. And that's really going to be the heart of the whole Mishnah. That's not so simple to say what I said yesterday. You can never carry between two domains. That was wrong what I said. The Mishnah, Rav Meir says Migag L'Gag, yeah. The Chachamim say Migag L'Gag, no. But we will see, even L'Chachamim, there are certain times that you could carry from one domain to another domain, even though they don't belong to the same person. We'll see more details. Guys, this concludes the first Machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Now we're starting, and today, I'll call this the second because it's all a hemshech to yesterday, and we're going to contrast it. Look at this. Gagin Hashavin L'Rabbi Meir, which according to Rav Meir holds, since they're not 10 tfachim higher and lower from each other, Rav Meir had this whole gezerah, remember that? Tail b'reshus harabim. But if you don't have that, you could carry. Or if you have one gag, you have a very large mansion. It's not neighboring anyone else. It's not nifrat sabim aloy l'makayim ha'asar loy. There's nothing asar around it. You have a very large gag. In other words, Beilan Avmeir, Beilan Abanan, this is a scenario where each gag is considered its own domain. Okay. Now the question is, what's the shayla? We'll see in a moment. Rav says, Mutal Talta B'kulei. Mutal Talta B'kulei. Shmuel says, Ein Metaltal Boy Ela B'daled. What are we talking about? What's the issue? So the Gemara has to explain. The way we explain it is by saying, Rav is saying mutal talta b'kulay. When Rav, we just learned shitas Rav b'chachamim. I know now it's not l'chachamim. It's going to be that you can only carry within daladamis. So the Gemara says that what's the issue over here? The issue over here is, let me read inside the Rashi. Okay, that's the question. We're speaking about the area becomes more than 2 beisam. That's the Nakud. With Rav Meir, it's more likely because even though homes were smaller, but if many homes are touching each other and you can carry megag legag, so the sum total is more than 2 sam. L'chachamim, the shayla here, the machlokes will be if you have a very large house and the gag's area is more than 2 sam. Now the rule is that whenever you have an area that's more than 2 sam, if it's hukaf ledira, you can carry. But if it's not hukaf ledira, then midrabanan, it's like a economist, you cannot carry more than $1. Are there walls around the roof? No, there are no walls around the roof. But even l'rav, when it's minkara mechitzta, which is the case over here, let's go lechachamim, because you can see the walls at the edge of the house going down on the outside of the house, you say good asik. Question is, do you allow for good asik to affect hukaf ledira? I get it, there's walls, but the emes there's no walls at all. It wasn't hukaf. Now, downstairs was hukaf ledira, but nothing upstairs. So Rav is going to say over here that, again, Rav over here says, mutal talta b'koloi, and Shmuel will hold that ein metaltal mo'yal dalam. So again, so the Gemara is going to ask, first of all, kasha Rav the Rav, does Rav allow walls or does Rav not allow walls? So the Gemara says, no, over there, above, yesterday, loy minkara mechitzta, so we were unable to say good asik. So now you had an issue of nifratzav v'loy l'makayim asaloi. Over here, since minkara mechitzta, the only walls that you are using, bein l'Rav Meir, bein l'chachamim, is the outside walls of the house. That's called minkara mechitzta. So you can say good asik. And automatically, as we'll see in a few lines, since you say good asik, it's considered hukaf ledira because the downstairs was hukaf ledira, so you can carry in everywhere. However, Shmuel holds ein metaltal nabay ela b'dal adamis. I kasha the Shmuel. Yesterday we learned Shmuel says you can carry on your own roof. No, it's lechachamim. That was yesterday. You can't carry migag legag, but Shmuel says on your own roof you can carry because good achitz mechitzta. So the Gemara says, yeah, yesterday we were learning about a roof, that your roof, the domain that we're referring to, is not more than 2 sa'ah. Over here, that's the Nakoda. We're learning about Havayosim Beis Osayim, and therefore it's treated like a economist. Hold on. If Shmuel holds that you say good asik, even by walls that you can't see from upstairs, is the chavada that you say good asik. Here, when you can see the walls, you can see the outside of the walls. Shmuel says, yeah, you say good asik. But here Shmuel is machmer. Shmuel says that good asik doesn't make those walls be considered walls that are hukaf ledirim. That's the beauty. Hane mechitztas lematon avidan. But lemaila loyavin, they were not physically made there. I know halacha l'meish misina, you're bringing it up. All you have is a wall, but it's not hukaf ledira. And therefore, Shmuel holds here l'chumra that v'havi kakarpav yesed mebeis osayim shelo hukaf ledira, and v'chol karpav yesed mebeis osayim shelo hukaf ledira ei metaltalim boy ela b'dalid moededik. Wow. So Shmuel allows for us to use good asik more than av. That's basically the contrast. That's why l'chachamim, you can carry migag on your own gag. It's not different from the maloyoy. But mitzat sheni, Shmuel allows you to have the walls up, but to define that the same status of the walls down. Down it was made ladira. That should also go up. Zois loy. Beautiful. Machlokes number 3. And one is, you'll see, one is all connected to the other. Guys, we are 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid. Itmar Sfina. What's the case here of a Sfina? This is the one thing you'll get automatically between the lines. The ship, inside of the ship was more than 2 Beisa. Guys, we learned above, 2 Beisa, 70 amas by 70 amas. And a bit. It's Shivim V'Shirai. So now, you have a ship, Rav says, a ship, these ships, I mean, the ship was made to go from A to place, location A to location B, but it was surrounded Ladira. People today, you also you live in the ship, you sleep in the ship, you eat in the ship. Shmuel says, no, wow, if you have a large ship, you may not carry more than daladamas. Now the question will be why? So the last line of the Amid Raf says, because the ha ika mechitztam, and it goes without saying, the walls were made for people to go in the ship. That's called dida. Shmuel says, I disagree with you. Why do you build walls in the ship? Is it for those who are inside of the ship? Or is it to keep the water from not coming into the ship? That's the latter of Shmuel. Shmuel says, because since mechitzos are primarily made lahavriach mayim asuyos, to keep the water out, similar to what we learned before. No, it's the good asik was not made for dira upstairs. No, it was not made lidira. Now, that really difficults people's lives. Guys, everyone traveled on ships on Shabbos. If not, you would never be able to travel a large distance over the sea. Okay, now if the ship has a roiv, yidden, that's a big problem. Not as a problem, it's not you can't go on a ship that's being taken for the majority if they are Jewish. Or if a Jewish company, Zim, when they owned the ship company in Israel, as the Rebbe wrote a letter that ship cannot go on Shabbos at all, even if you're going to stop in the middle of the ocean. Rav Moshe wrote a tshuva about that, and the Rebbe very humbly told to Rav Moshe, not disagreeing with his mastery over halacha. The Rebbe says that I know the mitzias of engineering more than Rav Moshe. And there's a lot of chilul Shabbos that happens in a ship, even if you stop it during Shabbos. So according to Shmuel, you can't carry in a ship. So says the Gemara, Amalei Rab Chia bar Yosef l'Shmuel. Now what we're going to learn now is the way Rav Ashi learns it. What I'm learning now will be learned otherwise in a few lines. This was such a shocker, so they wanted to know halacha l'maisa. Is that correct? So he asked Shmuel, is the halacha like you, or is the halacha like Rav? According to the way we're learning now, the kasha was regarding the ship. And Shmuel says, the halacha is not like me. See the beauty? He argued with Rav, but when it comes to B'poyel Mamash, halacha l'maisa, Amalei, Shmuel says, Hilchas Karav, you are allowed to carry in a ship, even though it's Yosef Mebei Sosai. Amar Rav Gidel, Amar Rav Chia bar Yosef. Now listen to this. That if the ship was taken out of the water and it was brought on dry land, and Kefa Alpia, you flipped it upside down. Now what happened, my friends? What used to be, it's called the hull, the bottom of the ship. Now is the roof. Under the ship, it's more than 2 sa. This statement was not about under the ship, because under the ship, the walls are hukaf ladira. That's a good picture. The question now is, what about the top of the ship? On top of the ship, there are no walls, but yes, there are. How are there walls? Good asik mechitzta. What did we just learn? Rav and Shmuel, that Rav allows for the good asik mechitzta to take the status of hukav ladira. Shmuel is the one that says not. He's asking, according to Rav, she'im kafal pia, she'im metaltla el ba'arba amas. Well, the question was that you cannot carry more than 4 amas. The question is, how is this different than the Gag? Or it's Rav who holds that you say good asik, and good asik schleps up the status of for what the walls were built also. Rav says by a ship that no, we don't say that the walls of the ship are made to keep the waters out. That also, but it was made for people to live in there. So how is this different, Gavaldik, than the Gag? So the Gemara clarifies, Kafa Alamai. Hold on. Why did people flip their ship upside down? If they flipped it upside down, because right now people needed to have a place for it to live, so they lived under the ship. If that's the case, then it's called Mechitzas Ladira. Excuse me. Rav Lishitasi will allow you to carry on the top. Then that was the whole machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. The first new one we learned today. Elot must be that this statement was said that if shekafa lizoifsa, they flipped it upside down to shmir tar on it. There was a common thing. You didn't want water to leak in, so you have to do repairs on it. That's the word. When it's in the ocean, it's mechitzas ladira. But if right now, look at this logic. Since you flipped it to fix it, that nullified the status of these mechitzas being ladira. Yes, Rav holds good achis mechitzta because it's mechitzas hanikares. Because when you are on top of the hull of the ship that's flipped upside down, you can see the walls of the ship. So you say good asik, but those walls even downstairs are no longer ladira. So the question was regarding upstairs. No, you can't carry. How great is that? Who wanted to ask a question?
I did. Just to clarify, this whole case of the boat, we're talking about a boat that's bigger than Beis Osayim. Is that the?
Yeah, that's not that big. Yeah.
But I'm just thinking. I remember we learned not that long ago about the case with the boat. I think it was Rashbag and a couple of other Tanoim, where one of them didn't move and one of them did move. And that was
very good. That was when the boat was beyond the tchum. That was about walking out of the ship. Here we're speaking about carrying in the ship, and here we already had an acknowledgement. Shmuel was maida that the halacha is not like him. Just to make that clear also.
Okay, but these Tanoim over there in that case about moving, it wasn't carrying. You're saying
it wasn't about carrying. No, a whole different topic. Correct.
Okay.
Obviously, if not, there's nothing for Shmuel to argue with. Okay. Now, this that we said that they asked Shmuel, is the halacha like you? And he said, no. I argued. Yagul Torah v'yadid, but halacha is like Rav. So we learned the question was regarding the ship. And the Gemara says, good, that was good gelerim, according to Rav Ashi, that Rav Ashi, indeed, masni law, Shmuel's concession, let's say, was regarding the Sfina. However, Zos wissen that Rav Acha b'nei Rava, masni law, ach sadra. Chavre, the fourth machlokes Rav and Shmuel. We spoke this out in the introduction. And ach sadra, many times was adjacent to a house. Many buildings here in LA, you have right outside, you have some sort of portica, you have some sort of, there's another better word for this. You go out of the house and you have wood on top and there's a little bit of a shaded area. That is
a pergola?
A pergola, thank you, Chaim. Here we're speaking dafke about a pergola or an achsadra, a portica that is outside in the field that has no wall. That's very important. And not the way we learned today on Namadal of Darashi, that taught us something new, that whenever the roof is slanted, you don't apply pitikra yored v'soisim. No, we're speaking about a portica that has a properly horizontal flat roof. So says the Gemara that where did Shmuel concede regarding the following argument, that the itmarach sadra bika, my friend, has a din of a carmelis. You may not carry in a bika more than 4 amas. Question is, are you allowed to carry under or inside this achsadra? Rav says mutal taltal v'kula. Why? We'll see in a moment, because pitikra yored desoisim. Shmuel holds ein metaltal and ba ela ba'arabam. right? Only in Daladamis explains the Gemara the Machlokes. Rav says mutal taltal kula farvas because of midan pitikra yored v'soisim, and everyone knows of that klal. Well, the question is, Shmuel does not argue with that rule. Shmuel does not apply the rule over here. Shmuel Amar ein metaltal ela ba'arba. You can only carry within dalad, not more than dalad. Why? Because lo yomrinon pitikra yored v'soisim, as Rashi explains. If you have not a single wall, if you were to have even only one wall, yes, you need to have 4. Once you have one, then pitikra creates the other 3. If you're starting with no physical wall, then to make azara pitikra for all 4, Shmuel disagrees with that. And on that, Shmuel conceded. When they asked Shmuel, halacha kavasach, and he said, no. That halacha indeed is like Rav. Says the Gemara, Virav. Now we start. This is going to be gavaldik. Guys, put one hand in the Gemara, put one hand on Rashi, 10 lines before the bottom of the narrow lines, the narrowest lines. Virav aliba de Rav Meir. You have to remember all these dinim now. What's Virav aliba de Rav Meir? Zok Rashi. Kiven the Omar, that when you have begagin hashovin, mitaltalin bekulan, that was Shitas Rav Meir Almon, that we view the Gag not like a caramelist. So the question is, are you allowed to carry Migag L'chatzir? In other words, the Gemara is asking, we know that he does not allow it, but why does he not allow it? Now, let's read it inside. Allah Amrinan L'kaman, God willing, we'll get there today. That L'divrei Rav Meir says that Gagin are all considered the same domain. That means I can carry from my Gag to your Gag. And now, we spoke this out yesterday correctly. Rav Meir also applies the same to Chatzeres, which means if I have my Chatzer adjacent to your Chatzer, li Rav Meir, Chatzeres Reshus La'atzman. I can carry from my Chatzer to your Chatzer, but you know what you cannot do? Even when Rav Meir, guys, held up, that you cannot carry from my Gag to your Chatzer. Gagin is considered Reshus, the same Reshus. If it's considered the same Reshus L'Rav Meir, you don't need a native Chatzeres. Chatzeres, which is what we would think you need a native Chatzeres for. L'Rav Meir, you don't need. Now, guys, not to get confused. Even according to Rav Meir, to take something from my house to my Chatzer, to your Chatzer, yes, you bet I need a native Chatzeres. Because that was L'Kelim Sheshavsu B'Tei Chabayis. But if you're only going from something that began Shabbos in my Chatzer to your Chatzer, L'Rav Meir, you're good. But that implies Migag L'Gag, you're good. Mechatzer L'Chatzer, my friends, you're good. But L'Rav Meir, from my Gag to your Chatzer, I'm not allowed to do that. And the Gemara wants to know why. Now, we have time. The Gemara, Rashi, in every line of this Gemara, that's why there's so many Rashis, wants to understand why was the Gemara asking this question only according to Rabbi Meir. What about the Chachamim? Now, let's read inside the Rashi weiter. Va'aliba de Rabbanan, regarding a Gag Yechidi, that even L'Rav you are allowed to carry. Why doesn't the Gemara ask, why are you not allowed to carry Migag L'Chatzer Leka L'Mitrachlei L'Rav, that you should be allowed to carry from a Gag to a Chatzer? Why doesn't the Gemara ask that question? Says Rashi, because it's not a question. Because according to the Chachamim, you see this detail, I misspoke yesterday. Shlomo, this detail, according to the Chachamim, we're going to see on top of Daf Tzadik Aleph, my Gag to your Chatzer, to someone else's Chatzer, is a transference that you are allowed to make. Wow. I know the Chachamim are the most machmir, but there are exceptions. And here the Chachamim are more lenient than Rav Meir. Moiridik. Reading inside the Rashi. The divrei Chachamim Gagin v'Chatzeres are considered Reshus Achas, even, and therefore umetaltel, going into the first line under the Gemara, umetaltel migag yechidi. You know why we're saying Gag yechidi, guys? Because if you have a Gag that is adjacent to another Gag, that goes into the Machlokes Rav and Shmuel. According to Rav, like we don't want to get into that part, you can't even carry in the Gag itself more than Dalal Damas. Umetaltel migag yechidi l'chatzer shel rabim. Means it belongs to someone else or belongs to many people, as long as he has Reshus Ba. So according to the Chachamim, you taka are allowed to carry Migag I know Rashi adds more details. Let's go back into the Gemara. That's one thing. That's one correction from yesterday. But according to Rav Meir, who in the Mishnah, he was more lenient, he allows you to carry migag legag. We know that Rav Meir does not allow you to carry migag lechatzer. And that's the kash of the Gemara, back in the Gemara. So Verav, I'll leave it at Rav Meir. So again, I want to read weiter. So why does the Gemara only ask it on Rav? According to everyone. So let's go weiter. The first line under the Gemara. And why don't we ask that question on Shmuel? Shmuel gagin hashavin l'Rav Meir. That's the beauty. Dafke l'Shmuel, who holds that when you have many gagin together, they become like a caramelis. Why do they become like a caramelis, my friends? We're speaking about when there's very large. That was the second machlokes that we learned the first machlokes today. Because Shmuel does not allow you to use good asik mechitzta, that it should be hukaf ladira. None of them are hukaf ladira. So adarabba, according to Rav Meir, when there are many gagan together, b'mitzias, you're going to end up with an area that's more than 2 sa. You may not carry on the gag itself. So if you can't carry, because it has a din of a caramelis, and what's the din of a chatzir, my friends? A chatzir has a din of a reshus hayachid. So of course, this explains why l'Rav Meir you may not carry migag l'chatzir. Gag dino ike caramelis. This is so good. Chatzir dino ike reshus hayachid. Anything that has 2 different halachic statuses of domains, you may not carry from one to the other. But fakert, since Rav, like we learned today, does allow you not only to use good aches mechitzta when there's mechitzta the minkara, but it allows you to take the status of hukaf ladira to bring it to these halachic walls. So therefore, Rav, you are allowed to carry on a gag even if it's more than 2 sasayim. It retains its status of a reshus hayachid. The chatzir also has a status of a reshus hayachid. Reshus hayachid is reshus achas. L'Rav and takel lechachonim, you're allowed to carry. Ha! But l'Rav Meir, why not? Gavaldik. Now we can read it. And for the Gemara, you forgot the Mishnah. What did the Mishnah say? That when Rav Meir allows you to carry megag legag as long as they are on the same level. The moment one is 10 tvachim higher than the other, vashteit in the Mishnah, you cannot carry. The Gemara asked, why not? Why not? And the Gemara says that Rav Meir had that unique gezerah that even if in my backyard I have this amud that is 4 by 4, 10 tvachim, I'm not even allowed to be mekativ on top of it. Gezerah tail reshus harabim. I don't want to repeat it. We learned that yesterday. That's the problem. Gag by default, it's a roof. It's a roof. The roof is going to be 10 tvachim higher than the chatzir. Maybe there are exceptions. We don't go into that. Maybe there's a slanty roof. A gag is above the chatzir 10 tvachim. You're kidding. 32 inches. Rav Meir l'shita soy that gezerah mishum de Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi, which is the gezerah mishum tail reshus harabim. Beautiful. Next. The Shmuel alibed Rabbanan, guys, just to find again, we have to read Rashi. Explains why this kasha is only on Shmuel. Rashi here is 11 lines under the Gemara, in middle of the medium width size Rashi lines. The Shmuel alibed Rabbanan, weiter, sagt Rashi, begag yechidi, that's yoiser mi beis osayim. Again, based on what we learned today, Shmuel is very liberal with good asik. But he's very machmir. You don't consider those walls hukaf ladira. So when you have a gag, so Rashi, that the size is more than 2 sasayim, lishmuel. Even the amad high good asik, lo you have a hekef ladira. That's what we learned today. And therefore it has a status of a caramelis. What happens if adjacent this gag, not l'Rav Meir. L'Rav Meir, whenever a gag which is tall is going to another domain that's low, you can't carry. But the Chachamim don't subscribe to the gezerah of tail, gezerah mishum tail b'reshus harabim. What happens if this gag is adjacent a karpaf more than 2 sasayim? Shelo yukaf ladira. Again, so you're creating 2 domains that have the same halachic status. Karmelis, chevra halskop, to a karmelis. Let's read weiter in Rashi. The Carmelisi, so the question is, why don't we allow Litaltel Minei Lekarpav more than 2 sasayim? Now hold on 1 second. Litaltel, the Tzvika asked that question before, but you can't carry 4 amas. That's not the question. not more than 4 amas. What happens if you have something from the edge of the gag and you're only carrying it into the beginning of the carmelis? That means you're not carrying it more than 4 amas. It's, beis amas bezeh, ubeis amas bezeh. Now, we know that this is something that's not allowed. Question is, why is it not allowed? Why? Now, according to Rav, there's no kasha. Why is there no kasha? Because Rav, we learned today, holds that we say good achis mechitzta. Hukaf ledira. Your gag is a reshus hayachid. The karpav has a din of a karmelis. It's 2 different reshuyasim. According to Rav Meir, there's no kasha. We just said whenever 2 domains are on different heights, Rav Meir is goizer, never to carry, even in your backyard, even a reshus hayachid. But back in the Gemara, according to Shmuel, that does not allow you to use good achas mechitzta for hukaf ledira. So your large gag has a din of a karmelis. Aliba de Rabbanan. Now we know, as we'll see, God willing, the beginning of today, tomorrow, that the Chachamim do not allow you to carry migag lekarpav. Why not? According to Shmuel, at least when your gag is more than beis osayim, nitalkal migav lekarpav. Answers the Gemara Amar Rava. Or we have over here on the side Amar Rabba Barula. I'll tell you why. Because maybe the roof that is now yoysim beis osayim, what happens in yipaches hagag? There'll be some sort of diminution. Some of the gag will fall off. Here in 1711, some of the roof falls in, and you'll have a lesser gag, and you won't notice it. So if the gag now is not yoysim beis osayim, dinoi kedeshus hayachid. Karpav is yoysim beis osayim, dinoi kekarmelis. In that case, you won't be allowed to carry. So since it might happen, therefore you never can carry. So the Gemara pushes back. Oy bazoi, mikarpav lekarpav nami lo yitaltel. And as we'll see again, that even lerabbanon, you are allowed to carry mikarpav lekarpav. But why don't we make such a gezeda that you should not be allowed to carry? Because dilma mifches v'asel, maybe one of these karpafin, maybe it's going to become diminished. Then you're going to rebuild the walls, but then it won't be yoysim beis osayim. That karpav will have a din of reshus hayachid. The other karpav that wasn't made smaller has a din of kekarmelis. Why didn't you make a gzeira over there? So the Gemara says that hasam I mifchas min kara le milsam. Any area that is enclosed with physical walls, it's easy to ascertain when the area got smaller, and you can actually visually see how large it is. You can at least approximate. You can get close because you have mechitzas. By a gag, that's the whole point here. A gag has no mechitzas. I know we're saying halachically good achas mechitzah, but you don't see it. Any area that's not surrounded with physical walls, when it becomes bigger or smaller, it's much harder to approximate. Oh, now it became smaller. Since so there is a greater fear that the gagan obviously were not that great. They would collapse in, and you wouldn't notice it, and then you would have your reshus hayachid to a reshus harabim. Wow. Okay, we have time, guys. Let's begin. Some of what we're learning now we'll have to repeat tomorrow. Nothing here is difficult. It's just very detail oriented. 3 lines from the bottom of the Amid. So again, when we had the Mishnah on Daf Pei Tes, the Mishnah began with gagois. Rav Meir was the Mekel, right? All the gaggers are shosachas. The Chachamim were the Machmer. But the Chachamim and Rav Meir spoke about roofs. What about what we just learned right now? What about from a roof to a chatzah? What about from a chatzah to a karpav? All of those details we didn't speak out. Okay, so says the Gemara like this: Omar Rav Yehuda, Kishatim Solomon, that when you will carefully analyze the shita of Rav Meir, even though Rabbi Meir only spoke about his kula regarding roof to roof on the same level is considered one reshus. Guys, appreciate his leniency, even though they belong to different people. And even though people downstairs, from bias to bias, they have to make an eruv chatzeres. But that's because people live there. That's going to be a key. An area that's primarily not used for living, there, he doesn't care that they belong to different people because they have the same status of Gag. So that logic, we said this yesterday, I think got correct, is applied to Chatzeros. Rav Meir will hold that my backyard and your backyard, two different people, we made no eruv. Not for anything that began in my house, but for something that began on the chatzir when Shabbos came in, without an eruv you could carry. Chatzeros are considered reshus la'atzman, and let's go to the Tzadik Aleph, we'll finish Rav Meir, and likewise, karpav lekarpav reshus la'atzman. Rashi is Masuk Midvash. Look inside the top Rashi. The karfeif is reshus la'atzman, ma'afilu hein. Shall beis anoshim, that's the chiddush. Obviously, if they belong to the same person, there's no issue. Even though they have two different owners, mitalkelim izelazeh. How did Rav Yehuda extrapolate this from the words of Rav Meir Zokta Rashi? Because since the Ha'amar Rav Meir, the second line in Rashi, Kol gagoy se'ir reshus achas. Shma mino, what does Rav Meir gold? The ein reshus mischalekes, only because of shinui ba'alim. Because if you say it belongs to two different people, boom, it's not owned by the same owner. And we always say, even if I'm a partner in your house, it's still called shinui ba'alim. Because if my gag only belongs to me, and if your gag belongs to me and to you, that's called shinui ba'alim. Rav Meir does not care at all about shinui ba'alim, only by the houses. Because if not, what's the whole need? What's the whole Shlem HaMelech doesn't fit. Ella, the third line in Rashi, Ella batim lichudayim. By a house, that's what King Solomon says, since my house belongs to me and your house has the same name of bias, here we care about ownership, but only by batim. Why? Because they are consistently used. A house is used lediram. Rav Meir holds that if you are in a domain that's not, you don't mamish live in there, even if they belong to different people, if they have the same status of reshus, gag legag, chatzir lechatzir, karpav lekarpav, there's no need to make an eruv. The mali Rashi, the mali gag, and mali chatzeris, mali karpifois. But let's go weiter to Rashi. Now we are making a keshetim soleimer in what the Gemara is not saying. Let's further analyze. You know what he's also implying? That Rav Meir only allows dafka what we mentioned, gag legag, Michatzer lechatzir umikarpav lekarpav. Avo migag lechatzir or migav lekarpav. You can't do that. The question is, why not? Hold on, why not? If people don't primarily live in a gag, people don't primarily live in a chatzir, people don't primarily live in a karpav, who cares? Guys, that's what we learned yesterday. Tail b'reshus harabim. Rav Meir has another klal, not related to this. If you have two areas that are 10 tfachim or more, higher or lower, which goes together from each other, you may never carry, even if it belongs to the same person. That's Rav Meir. So guys, remember this. At least we got good Rav Meir. From a high area to a low area, never. Rav Meir in the Mishnah only spoke about gag. Rav Meir's kula applies migag legag and michatzer lechatzer and mikarpav lekarpav. Why? The words of Rashi. Because shinui ba'alim is only a problem by batim. And if you don't have the problem of its different ownership, then there has to be a commonality. But there is a commonality. Gag, gag. Chatzar, chatzar, karpav, karpav. And you may carry, and God willing, we'll continue tomorrow. What Rabbi Yehuda, areingeteicht, l'divrei chachamim, to be continued. All right, Baruch Hashem, we got that. The camera, good.